Welcome to Clicks and Coffee. Today we're joined by Lauren Davis, founder and CEO of Davis Clinical Consulting and FASTMedical. With a background as a registered nurse and corporate compliance officer, Lauren launched Davis Clinical Consulting in 2017 to provide regulatory compliance and leadership support to long-term care facilities. And in 2021, she introduced FASTMedical, a software solution designed to standardize assessment in assisted living facilities, enhancing transparency and care quality. Lauren, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, what motivated you to establish Davis Clinical Consulting, and how has your experience as a nurse influenced its mission?
Perfect. So I think we have to start from the beginning. And
Okay.
so when
I love a good story.
when I graduated nursing school, I thought I was going to be working with babies. That's, I think, what a lot of nurses maybe aspire to in the very beginning is the babies. They're cute, they're sweet. But working in the NICU and working with those specialty cases, I decided babies were not for me. And so went to the other side of the spectrum and started in the geriatric population. Through college, I had worked as a CNA, and through high school, which is the person who provides care to these individuals. So had a lot of experience with the geriatric population, working in different settings. And after then working with babies for a very short period of time, decided to transition. Then received my first long-term care job as the sole RN in a 99-bed facility, which was fun and challenging, but learned so much in that situation. I worked night shift, and night shift is just a great opportunity to really learn the industry, work with your peers and other colleagues to really gain that just baseline knowledge of how it's going to work. From there, then moved into a day shift position as a new mom and not wanting to be overnight with working and then being awake all day with a baby. Then started the day shift position. I worked as a staff education coordinator, infection control nurse, wound care nurse, nurse manager, an MDS nurse, which is a whole different line of nursing, which really focuses on the payment and reimbursement of the nursing home side. So got some good baseline information there. Transitioned into a director of nursing role, which I held for 5 years of that same 99-bed facility. And with that, really focused on leadership and focusing on clinical initiatives that would really improve the overall success of the organization. And so that was I would say one of my favorite positions was that director of nursing role. I was the sixth director of nursing put into this position in a 1-year time frame. So at that point, I said, just fire me now, because I don't think I can do it. I've never done this before. So really was put into that position with not a lot of baseline knowledge of leadership. That's not something they teach in school. So it's something that you have to go out into the community and work with different organizations to obtain that education. In that role, I did take some different leadership courses. I was one of the first graduates of an iLead program in the state of Wisconsin through Leading Age, which was a fantastic organization. Got a lot of education, a lot of leadership skills, which was just really helped me succeed in that role. After 5 years in that position, I decided to move on to a C-suite position and chose a corporate compliance officer over one of the largest CCRCs in Wisconsin. Held that role for about 2 years and decided, you know what, I really want to do this on my own. And there was a lot of opportunity in the field that I could identify that I felt I could do more than working just with one company. So started my own consulting company in 2017. And really from there have just flourished and have been bombarded by all different sectors and even states. So currently, Davis Clinical is a national company. We can service all 50 states, which is really exciting. The portfolio, my first timeout. Stuttered a little there. But my first consulting opportunity was with an organization called Leading Choice Network. And really, it is a fantastic organization, focuses on clinical excellence. And it's a clinically and financially integrated network across the state of Wisconsin, where we really use the power of quality to impact the payers and the amount of reimbursement that these organizations will achieve. It's mostly a nonprofit. Most of our members are nonprofit, but again, serves about a third of all long-term care organizations in Wisconsin. And with that, as my first consulting job, I've held that position now for 8 years as the state clinical advisor for leading Choice Network. And then with that, have grown then my additional consulting services. And it's just such a great fit because as Leading Choice Network, I have a very set scope. And if they need additional support or resources, I have my consulting team that can provide those to the organization. So back to your question about, why did I decide to start the consulting? And I think it comes down to, I really felt like when I started as a director of nursing, I felt thrown to the wolves. And there was a lot of tears associated with that position because it was really hard and challenging. And so with my consulting company, I've really decided that the things we're focusing on, the service lines we provide, will support those new leaders, will help them stay in the industry so they don't jump ship and head to the hospital or to some other outside of healthcare. As we know, long-term care is only growing, and the need for good leaders in those positions who have experience in long-term care is so necessary. So I would say my focus is really, again, nurturing and mentoring those leaders and helping them be successful in their roles within the long-term care organizations.
That is a pretty impressive background and path to what you're doing today. And so, what are the I would say like the main service that you offer for all the clients? Like what would you say is makes the bulk of your consulting?
Yeah, so we do a lot of survey support. So a lot of that regulatory compliance. We are the organization that you can call when you get a directed plan of correction from the states. Whether that's in Wisconsin or another state, again, we have about 40 consultants across the nation that then
Wow.
we can offer that support into different categories, whether it's in nursing, or a operational support as a nursing home administrator. So with that, we have a ton of different opportunities to help these organizations clear and get past that non-compliance, which then allows them to take patient again, accept payment, so they are not stuck in that denial of payment window for too long, which can really impact the operations.
And especially when you have to deal with also, governmental regulation,
Oh yeah,
you need to make sure that it's done well and like exactly how you're supposed to do it. Otherwise, like, no, sorry, that's not good. Do it again.
yes,
That
exactly.
can be an infinite loop. And so I imagine that's kind of after doing all that, that's where you start having the idea for Fast Medical.
Yes,
Um, and so, can you tell us a little bit about like how did you come up with the idea? And it's a fairly new company because you started a couple of years ago.
yep.
But I'm very interested in learning like the story and how you're using it yourself, because I imagine that big part is during consulting. And how do you see the future of, maybe let's do one question at a time.
Okay, so FASTMedical, FAST stands for Functional Assessment Screening Tool. So FASTMedical started in 2021, and it was really after working in long-term care, whether that be in assisted living, nursing home, so all post-acute care. And what we realized was that in assisted livings, there is not a standardized assessment tool process. So nursing homes have the MDS. Home care has Oasis. Hospice has theirs. The hospital systems has their specific. So all of these different sections or medical sections have these specialized assessments that can really then determine the acuity for those individuals that you're caring for. What we identified, and it's not common knowledge, but that there is not a standardized assessment tool in each state or even national. Some people do their assessments on paper. Some people use an electronic system, but again, none of them match, which then leads to just that lack of transparency between caregivers owner operators, and families. So it's like this trifecta. Owner operators don't necessarily always understand the types of patients they're taking into their communities. They get into a lot of regulatory issues when they have patients they cannot care for. And so it's really important from a nurse perspective, when I'm looking at this big picture, is that, well, the reason why you are in these survey issues is because you didn't have the proper training, education, your staff weren't prepared from a medical supply situation to manage that patient's care. So what we put together was basically this standardized assessment tool that's cloud-based, that I pulled back my MDS brain and really brought in some of those questions that you would want to know to capture a good objective assessment. So that also is a big component, is it's very objective. Whether I fill it out or you, Alexander, fill it out, we would come up with the same acuity score. So it's based on a 0 to 100 point system. Mom comes in or grandma comes in and we fill out this assessment tool. She starts at 20 points. Okay, now a year later, oh, she's at 60 points. What does that mean from a payment structure? What does that mean from, can she still live here? Can we still meet her needs? That is a big struggle, I would say, a lot in assisted livings, is knowing when that person no longer can stay in your community or needs additional support or needs to go to the nursing home or bring in additional caregivers, whatever that looks like. And then how can we ensure that those facilities are getting reimbursed what they need to be reimbursed in order to maintain that adequate care? So FASTMedical does all of that, as well as giving these organizations a recommended staffing pattern. We see a lot of organizations, real estate investors coming in and buying assisted livings. Well, with no clinical background, there's no requirement to have a nurse on site. There's no requirement to have certain components that you would think would be involved in care of that resident. And so making sure this assessment process, again, can be as simple as possible. Anybody could fill it out and come up with the same score because it asks very set questions, and they're weighted based off how much time that person needs care for.
Wow, that is pretty cool. And it's funny because I was hearing in some other episode that it's always an issue is making sure that, like, first of all, because the care evolves as the person lives in the communities, and making sure there is never a disconnect between all of that, and because it's based on the facility being able to keep going and to keep being profitable, because you need to still be profitable, and then making sure that you get the adequate amount of care for the patient, for the family, because we all hear the bad stories, and it's a lot of the time a disconnect in how things are done. So
Absolutely.
I really like that idea, and I like the, as much as I, love the idea of the United States, and every state has their own way of doing things, and you can move to whichever state fits better your needs or ideas. I think that some things should be common, and I think that that is a good one, to be common, to make sure that somebody in California, and they, because now a lot of people move because of, look at us, we're doing a podcast, and you're in Wisconsin, I'm in Florida. So it's pretty crazy when you think about it. And families do that now. And that's sometimes a little bit of a problem with the parents, being in a state, the children being in another state. And how do you make sure that they receive the same amount of care that are good in your state, but how are they good in that state? So it's
Absolutely.
really,
And then it comes down to really finding what facilities. So, one of the biggest questions we get, if we have a family member call our office, they'll say, well, how do we know what level of care mom or dad should go to? Well, we can
yeah.
fill out this fast assessment tool with you to create a baseline, and then it will give you some recommendations as to what facilities could meet your care capabilities within that. So it really helps ensure that the right person is getting placed in the right organization at the right time in their life. And that facility is then able to get the right reimbursement in order to keep their doors open to continue to be providing care.
So it's really a software that helps all of the sides on the
Really.
of the equation. No, that's really good. And do you have any stories where people implemented the software, and like they realized that they had some people that were totally missed cared for.
Absolutely. So, example, I would say this is my favorite example. So, we were implemented by an organization that had 42 facilities, and they had just recently purchased 8 communities in a larger town here in Wisconsin. And so, we completed the assessment for them. Um, what we found out is that those residents were not assisted living capable, like they did not fit that profile of that assisted living resident and really needed a higher level of care. They were family care residents, which means they were managed by the state and had state funding. And what we identified is that that state funding varied so much from one patient to another, which really caused just, again, there was some subjectivity when those assessments were completed, but we found a variance of two almost identical need residents had about $100 per day difference in their payment structure, which is make or break for an organization. This organization then was able to use our assessments. They utilized it during a court proceeding, which allowed them to basically sell back the organizations to the previous owner, and was able then to get their full money back, about $800,000 in escrow that went back to these organizations, the owners, because they had bought product or bought organizations basically saying these were the types of patients they accepted. Here's your, your margin, your profit loss, but it did not pan out that way. So what I would say is whenever you're doing a due diligence for your assisted livings and you're looking to purchase buildings that have residents already in them, having some sort of process like that to come in and ensure that your whole assessment is complete, not just your due diligence on the financial side, the building side, but really from a case-by-case resident side, so you know what you're buying. Because if you're expected to buy these organizations and now you have to discharge 80% of the population because you cannot meet their needs or they don't meet the state criteria for that type of living setting, that really impacts that new owner's bottom line of revenue. And so having a system like this in place and being able to utilize it and really help benefit not only that due diligence process, but then also the long-term profit and sustainability of that new organization.
Wow. And we all know that like a lot of investors or anybody, acquiring senior living communities, they don't necessarily know or they don't necessarily have the knowledge, and same thing, it's like it's cross, not border, but cross states
Absolutely. Yep.
acquisition. So yeah, it's
Yep.
that's a pretty good that's a pretty compelling, I would say, argument to
I
use your software.
Because not only does it then help, again, that bottom line, but then also ensures that those patients are getting the right care, because ultimately we are a people business. And if we are saying we can do something, but reality is the staff aren't trained to do that, we're contributing to that poor patient outcome, contributing to filling up hospitals and their ERs and not being able to accept them back into the communities because they're just not appropriate. So it's a clog in the system that we have to address if we're going to continue to have a sustainable assisted livings.
No, no, totally. And then for sure, what's great is again, it makes it easy for everybody, and everybody on all of the sides. So people that buy get better, people that acquire communities make sure that they know what they're getting into.
Absolutely.
People that are already running, they can have a good assessment also of where they are, making sure that we address any problems. And then for all the residents and all the families, making sure that wherever you are, that it's a good, you get the amount of care that you need.
Absolutely.
No, that's pretty fascinating. And so how is it to launching, I would say, a consulting business is one thing, but launching a software business is another thing.
Oh,
How do you navigate, like, first of all, like, how did you start, how did you say, like, from the consulting, oh, let me add another thing on top of everything that I'm doing, and let me create a software? How did you start that business, or got the idea of, like, saying, I'm going to launch a software?
yeah. Well, so I started it on an Excel document. I'm a
Okay.
nurse. I am not a computer programmer. So I started on an Excel document and I made all my calculations. And then from that, I was able to then hire a contract with a software development team that really brought my vision to reality. That was by far the a very humbling experience, because when software developers talk to you, you have no idea what they're talking about. They speak a totally different language than me as a nurse. And so really, I work with a great organization that has really helped me develop that and put that into process. Um, Helped that my brother-in-law was also a software developer, so he was able to kind of bridge that gap. But again, I saw, so started the pilot process, worked with different organizations, filled out these Excel tools as samples to ensure that the questions I was asking matched up, made sense, and really was helpful to the organization. Because one of my biggest pet peeves is when technology comes into the organization and it has all these bells and whistles. Fantastic. It also comes with the bells and whistle price tag. Which then, when you're working with these organizations, they have very small margins. And so ensuring that the product that you're implementing has value, not only from a cost savings or maybe a time perspective, but then also gives you information that you can do something with. And so that's what I've really built Fast Medical on, is as a director of nursing, as a CEO of an organization, these are the things I would want to know. And so that's all the software does. It's not overbuilt, I would say. It's built by a nurse. So it's very practical and makes sense as you're filling it out, as you get your reports, it makes sense.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what you said. Is the point is to have something, you get it and you use it 100%. It makes sense, and it sounds to me like it kind of sells itself, the software, because I'm sure that everybody that is gonna start using it is gonna have not a revelation. Maybe some people will do, but at least really have a good picture, and really be able to act on the information that you're getting.
Absolutely.
And then we'll share some screenshot and some links, because I'm pretty impressed with even the look of everything, and the website is like, it looks like a almost like $1 billion style software, website. So it's very nice.
Created
um
here in Beloit, Wisconsin.
yeah, yeah, no, no, it's very, very impressive. And so, how are you? Because we're in a marketing podcast, so everything always, I'm kind of a little curious on that. How different it is to market your consulting business and then your software business, and how do you manage those two?
Yeah, so it is definitely, again, new territory is that marketing component. I really hang my hat on the wall that I'm a nurse, but we do have a team. We have a team of marketing. We love to share our story. I think sharing the story and the why behind all of these things. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's cop cars.
Yeah, yeah, I
Okay,
can hear a little bit. It's fine, at the end of the day, it's
yeah, sorry.
all good now.
Um, So we have our marketing team that really focuses on sharing our story and being able to tell the why behind why we've implemented or why we come out with new programs. The software, again, it's the story behind it. People don't realize that there is not a standardized assessment. You would think healthcare has their act together in all levels of care, but reality is there's still quite a few buildings that are still on paper assessments. There's things that there's not nurses completing these assessments. It's people who have their knowledge and they're very knowledgeable and able to run operations, but don't have that clinical component. And so that is where I feel having a tool that was, again, built by nurses and telling the story as to why is this important, really is helpful in the marketing of that. We use a lot of social media platforms, as you see, our websites, because we feel that there's just a lot of opportunity of sharing our story more on a national presence. We are not bound by any state lines. Like I said, we're national in both our software and our consulting firm. So we really want to get it out to as many people as we can, because we just have such a strong opinion that this is the way healthcare needs to go in assisted livings.
For sure. Oh, no, no, that I agree. And so, how do you? So how do you envision like the future of senior care and technology? Because you seems to me that like you're at the forefront of that. And then it's funny, we had another guest on the podcast that has a company called Senior Lytics, which is a analytics platform, but it's not a software that replaces everything. It's really like a solution that would plug it into all your existing system, extract the information, and then present it in a very actionable manner.
Yep.
And same thing, they had the same issue where they were under billing. So same thing, because there is this disconnect between the billing and then the care assessment, and then it changes. So one of their best story again was like that they discovered that somebody was being totally underbilled for the care level. So
Yes.
the I would say the care personnel say like, we know we need to increase the care, so they start doing the work, but then on the back end they didn't do that. But so yeah, technology is interesting, and I would like to kind of hear your point of view on how do you see technology, because we have software like yours, like this other one. We have AI tools, cameras, fall detection, like complete suite with sensors, cameras, and all the things. I even heard some people like to use the Amazon Echo, like
Oh,
those little speakers, and then that way from your house, so like the children can ping the parents in their room. So I thought that was pretty cool, because we would use it, as a family. You put it in the kids' room, it's like dinner is served. But in that case, you do it as the parent. Hey, how are you? Are you there? And so it was pretty cool. So kind of want to see, how do you see things evolving in the senior living on the technology side of things?
so I think AI in senior living is going to only continue to increase. There's a lot of different technology that organizations use currently, more so in the skilled nursing side than I would say in the assisted living. But I would say more and more organizations should, if they don't already, start to invest in AI. We know that the workforce is shrinking and our older population is growing. And so we are just outnumbered significantly from caregiver to patient population as far as the trajectory of where that's going. And so the importance of utilizing AI is going to be huge. Like you said, fall detection, the remote patient monitoring, more automated services or automated operations is going to be huge. Because the one thing we have to really focus on is how do we give time back to these caregivers so they can spend quality time with the patients. They're not stuck behind a computer looking at reports or data or whatever that is, or documenting. How can we make that more automated? Because what really matters again is the individual and their experience at their end of life, and how can we provide the best quality of care to that person.
I'm happy to hear that, because um, a lot of the so technology is great, and unfortunately we're seeing that some technology is being used in a weird way and kind of separating people with each other, of interacting with each other. So I like your way of thinking of, let's use technology to give back time to people.
Absolutely.
And that's what I also want to see, is to make sure that whatever technology we use, it helps caregivers or any personal in a senior living community, have more time to be with people, because at the end of the day we have to do the compliance and regulation and all those things, but now it's taking so much time that becoming a difficult balancing act
Absolutely.
between all of it. And so I'm happy to hear that more and more people think like that, of like, let's use technology to help, and spend more time. And so you have an amazing story experience, build two companies, one consulting, one software. So what advice would you give to healthcare entrepreneurs, aiming to develop solution for the senior living industry?
I think the biggest thing is just knowing the client and really understanding the problem, walking in their shoes, really identifying that this is a concern, this is the problem. Again, it's that story behind whatever you're building. And if you really understand how it's going to impact the industry and really can speak the language of the people you're selling to, I think that is so important. Because if you've never actually lived it, breathed it, slept, dreamt about it, it's really hard to identify the full solution. And so I think that's so important to really encourage all of you as entrepreneurs in the healthcare space. If you've worked in healthcare and you've seen a gap in whatever you're working on, that is where then I think technology or potentially building new operations or different processes could really impact the overall organization.
So it's always a similar, I would say, advice. It's like, oh, I was doing that. I got really annoyed by this, and then so I decided to create a company.
Yep.
And it's same story a little bit with you, where you lived it, breathed it day and night,
Yep.
and then said, okay, I know I can help better if I do, if I create my own company. So now,
Yeah.
kudos to you. Very, very impressive. I love people that find ideas that can really be used all over the place and all over the US, and ensure that we have a good path. So hopefully, I would say in the next few years, FAST is going to become like the official assessment tool.
Yes, it should.
It should, but maybe we'll see you at the conferences to talk about it. I think that's the next step is how to become, and maybe that's going to be the next podcast, is like, let's have a talk with the you know standardized test company. But Lauren, it was amazing having you on the podcast. I really wish you all the best. I hope I'm going to see you at a couple of shows around the US this year, and maybe next year as fast the official software for assessments.
Yes, perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. Love talking with you.